I just can't hear him like that, you know? It just, you can't tell me that when you hear that, you don't believe him. My mother. As long as he's still in prison, I will never let it go.
I'm looking at these pictures and going, wow, because you see her neck with a large, substantial hemorrhage to it. You have almost 17 injuries on the body. It looked like she almost went through a washing machine. Something happened in that tub.
She had significant water in her lungs. There was no question she drowned. The issue in this case was manner of death. Was it an accident? Was it a suicide? Was it a homicide? The first thing we had to do was try and figure out what happened in that bathtub.
You lose your spouse and convict him of murder? He didn't kill her. It was an accident. I had a mini stroke from all the pressure of everything that was going on. And Frank gonna be put in prison for something he didn't do. It's not just what's happening to Frank, but what's happening to our entire family.
It's like they go backwards before they go forward. There's that first Christmas in 1999 when I was brought home and we have the video. It's great. It's just seeing me, my mother, my dad, and they're just oogling over the baby and everything. She was only alive for 3 months, longer than that. Three months after I was brought from Russia, adopted by my two parents, Cynthia passed away. For me, just not having a mom growing up. But then I just started thinking that it's not about that anymore. Right now, the focus needs to be on my dad and defending him.
Tell me where your father currently is.
So my dad is at Menard Correctional Facility in Chester, Illinois. The police say that they're saying happened, we know did not happen. We're just gonna keep fighting for his innocence, no matter what. And this is just gonna be a memory one day.
February 28th, I got a call at 2:30. Brother Frank on the phone calling, yelling, "She's dead, she's dead." And then I heard Frank say, Cynthia's dead. And I'm like, oh my God, Frank. You just bolt out of bed. You're totally awake. It's like from sleep to instant awake. When I first saw my brother, I went through the front door that night. I ran up to him and I grabbed him and hugged him. And, he was sobbing and I just held him. Cynthia She liked things very hot because she had arthritis. And she probably was dizzy and passed out in the hot tub. That's all I could think that could possibly have happened. That night was like something out of a movie. I knew she was dead. I knew that he called the police, of course. I don't remember thinking anything except, oh my God, this is just unreal. It's hard reliving all of this. So
A murderer. Without a doubt. On the night on February 28th, I was on patrol right down the street from the house of the Bushauers, and so when I got to the house, Mr. Bushauer answered the door in a panic and said that his wife had drowned. Obviously, at that point, I did check for a pulse. I checked her body temperature. It was, obvious that she was deceased. I pressed on her neck, and then blood started coming out of her nose area. That person's been deceased for a while. There was nothing on her neck that night that would indicate any type of injury externally. Went to bed, and that Cynthia basically was going to take one of her whirlpool baths. And then some point at, I think around like 2-ish, he hears the baby crying, and he woke up, went in there, and discovered that she was in the tub. So he reaches in, grabs her, and pulls her out. And at that point, takes her and put her on the floor, and he calls 911. Wet clothing whatsoever. And he just said that he reached into a full tub of water and pulled her out. You should be soaked. There wasn't water all over the place. There wasn't things knocked down. If I found my daughter in a tub and was drowned, I'd pull her out and I'd probably knock everything over. So his story, I think that everybody else that was there, including the investigator and the evidence technician, also felt that same way, that it required substantial follow-up. As a patrol officer, I was just there to assist. After I think the body was removed, I was cleared and went home. But when I left the house, there was a feeling with myself. I knew that something was definitely odd about it. Something happened in that tub. Something violent happened in that tub.
They went to Russia, and they adopted David on Thanksgiving Day. He was, I believe, 9 months old when they adopted him. It was a special day. I mean, I was happy for him. I think that's something he really in his heart wanted. And to have a son was, just a thrill. They were talking about adopting maybe a little girl. next. Then all of a sudden, she's gone. I know that he was in a lot of pain. We were worried that he might do something stupid, like suicide.
This is a letter that was authored by Frank to Cynthia. Our arguments have been extreme at times to the point where rather than withdraw, I am now on the attack. I have already threatened you physically, constructive manner, then divorce is better than assault or murder. There was multiple letters, and they were a back and forth. This is them speaking to us, to each other. And some of the stuff that was in the letters was pretty drastic and pretty harsh. That's motive for murder.
They were going to a marriage counselor. The writing back and forth was something that the counselor encouraged them to do. And they used statements out of a book, The Peacemaker, that they used as a guide, a marriage guide. I think that divorce is better than a book. They were having so many personal issues. They were totally different people. She was very materialistic, but Frank was not. Cynthia liked everything very grand, and she could be a very hard person. He gave her everything she wanted, and it wasn't good enough for her. Yes, he was frustrated with her, but no, he didn't kill her. It was an accident. She passed out from that intense heat and drowned in a hot tub.
They interviewed a lot of people in the course of their investigation back in 2000. They learned that there was an enormous amount of strife in that marriage. Cynthia told friends that he would be calm and normal, and then all of a sudden he would blow up in anger. She had significant water in her lungs. There was no question she drowned. But she also had a deep bruise in one area of her neck. She had fresh scrapes, abrasions on her knee, on her nose, on her chin. The issue in this case was manner of death. Was it an accident? Was it a suicide? Was it a week after Cynthia died, Frank went down to the police station and was interviewed by investigators from the Illinois State Police. He talked about the fact that they were having marital difficulties, and there came a point during that interview when the investigators showed, and they were pointing out the injuries. And Frank made a comment to them that I might have killed her, and I just don't remember. Who says that? I wouldn't call it a confession, but they're very incriminating statements.
Well, I don't think it's a confession. I think it's confusion. Confusion on his part. I told Frank, how can you remember something you didn't do? You know, how can you remember something that never happened? But the police kept pushing that because they wanted a conviction. They wanted to get their man. Well, there was no man to get.
The detective went to the state's attorney's office and spoke to an assistant state's attorney that was there at the time and said, here's what I have. And he was told, yeah, you don't have enough for a homicide.
At the end of the 2 or 3 weeks, the case pretty much came to a full stop. I was actually just a patrol officer answering the calls and doing traffic stops like a normal police officer usually does. I would drive around South Barrington and I'd drive by his house and I'd point out, I'd say, there's our unsolved homicide right there. I'd point to the house. Because I knew that someone was murdered and somebody got away with it.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I just can't hear him like that, you know? It just, you can't tell me that when you hear that, you don't believe him. You know, you don't believe that he was hurt. And how have to say, no, he was lying. My father acted as both roles in my life. He acted as my father, and he acted as my mother. But that really worked for him because he is such a gentle person for someone who had never been a father in his life and is in his mid-50s at that point. It astounds me how great of a father he was able to be for me.
When I was asked in 2010 to become a detective, I asked the chief at the time, can I open that up? And he said, sure, go for it. After 10 years, there was no new evidence, but I just knew that it deserved another try. 162. I'm looking at these pictures and going, wow, because you see in the medical examiner picture her neck with a large, substantial hemorrhage to it, which doesn't happen in an accident. There wasn't anything that we saw on the neck that night, but when they did the autopsy and extracted them, there was petechia in the scalp and eyes. It's hemorrhaging basically in spots. It's seen in suffocation cases. You have like almost 17 injuries on the body. It looked like she almost went through a washing machine. Dr. Denton was the original medical examiner. When I called him, he goes, I knew this was a homicide and I've been waiting for you to call me. On the morning of her autopsy, there was no law enforcement official there with no. He didn't get all the reports. So if he had those reports, he would have ruled it a homicide.
I read all the police reports, the autopsy report, everything that was in the file. I said to him, it sure looks like a homicide. I was trying to figure out what happened in that bathtub. We removed the bathtub from the home and brought it to a fire department. And we had the water death expert come out, and she spent an entire day doing water.
We were trying to show how it happened, so we can show a jury or a judge or anybody, this is what we believe happened. When I arrived at the house, Frank Bushauer was wearing, from what I recall, pajama pants and a t-shirt. His clothes were just noting, like, nothing is knocked down. There wasn't water all over the place. Our recreation models that were the same height and weight as Cynthia and Frank, every time that we did a new recreation, we would change out the pajamas. Is it wet? Is it not? When we had the person do it, he was soaked. She's in a full tub, and you went in to go grab her out, you would get wet somewhere. We also did scenarios of how did he pick her up out of a tub full of water and not knock down. We determined that you had to pick somebody up with such precise care and lift them over those items.
I do think that there was probably acts of cover-up. The changing of the clothes, the setting of the items back on the time, just spent thinking, I'm going to call the police. I've got to convince the police this was just a drowning. So I think a lot of that was taking place during that time. And the final test trial we did with the water death expert was a homicidal drowning test trial. And the purpose in doing that was to determine, how did she get these? Frank Bushauer model was forcibly holding down the Cynthia Risco model, and her hands were flailing and hitting the jets.
We all looked at each other and were like, that's it right there. This is what happened, because our model was getting the same injuries that Cynthia had. She was cutting her knees. She was getting the same exact injuries that Cynthia had. And the struggle that they had in our mock one was mere seconds. And the one that happened for real happened much longer. I believe that he pushed her in that tub and killed her.
And under how injury occurred, he changed it to forcibly submerged in a bathtub. At that point, I felt we had enough to arrest Frank Bushauer.
On April 24th, 2013, I was in 8th grade. And as I'm walking, I'm greeted by police officers. My stomach just drops. I thought I did something, like I was in trouble. So, as I sit down, they explained to me that my dad had been arrested. And I remember asking them, I'm like, well, how many parking tickets did he get? And I was left thinking to myself, what are you talking about?
Are you okay?
Like, this happened already? I'd never heard anything about this. I knew that my father did not kill my mother. That first night, I didn't sleep in my own bed. On the bed, and I just broke down. You know, I broke down. I was alone in the world.
Early with us, and if he said no, then we would inform him that there was a warrant. I think it was our goal on that day to get a confession, of course.
So, February 28th, 2000.
Worst day of my life.
Yeah, I can imagine. Very traumatic, right?
We showed him a lot of the medical examiner.
Uncles, and do we know how that happened?
I have no idea.
You guys didn't get in any kind of scuffle or anything like that prior to her taking the whirlpool?
We asked him, how did you pick her up out of a wet, full tub, as he claims, pull her out of the tub, put her on the floor, and then when I meet you how did you accomplish that?
I went around the top of her waist, right under her arms, pulled her over to the side of the tub, and onto the floor.
Would you mind showing me how you picked her out of the tub? So he goes, yeah, sure, I did this, and then I did this.
Okay. You didn't get wet by pulling her out of the tub?
No.
Okay. How about her? She had to be wet when you pulled her out of the tub?
Oh, yeah.
Was the floor wet?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
He really just didn't have an answer for it.
What do you think happened? Do you think this is... do you think this...
Certainly come to that conclusion after looking at these. I would think it was a homicide.
But the issue is, nobody else did this. You're the guy. So...
Well, that's what I would certainly think.
He's dipping his feet in the pool of confession, stepping into it.
The only way I could have done this would be that without any recall, because I don't recall anything. And that's the truth.
Are you sorry you married her?
Yes.
Even to this day?
To this day.
The interview ended just right after that. Walk him right down a hallway into the jail.
Never, ever thought this would come up again. Ever. Frank was very naive. He thinks in facts. What happened to her? Trying to figure out the cause. Not really thinking he's the cause. He was not the cause of her death. Those jets were on, pushing her body around. So she had a lot of bruises on her knuckles from where the body was dragged around. You lose your spouse? Convict him of murder? And I woke up about 4 a.m, and I was very dizzy. The whole side of my face was numb. My family took me to the emergency room, and they said, yes, I had a mini stroke. It was just all the pressure of everything that was put in prison for something he didn't do. And it was just a really hard time. So anyway, that's what happened to me. I mean, it's not just what's happening to Frank, but what's happening to our entire family. So...
After the judge came back, I could feel that it was not going our way. I was getting terrified in my seat, and as he's getting those words out, I'm like losing control of my breath, and I'm trying to, and at the end of it, he says, so with that in mind, I am finding Frank Bushauer guilty of first-degree homicide. My face just went numb. My entire face. I couldn't feel it as they take him out in cuffs. And, he's just mouthing the words, "I love you." So I see the cash in the wallet, and I'm like, my dad needs this money. He needs stuff right away when he gets to Cook County. So I get through security, and I'm running through the hallway of the courthouse. And then I fall, or whatever, I drop it, and cards go flying everywhere, and I'm just like starting to cry there too. I'm just trying to get everything back into the wallet. My dad. All right.
My mom collects both of them. This call is subject to recording and monitoring. To accept charges, press 1. Hello, this is a prepaid collect call from an inmate subject to recording and monitoring. To accept charges, press 1. Hi, David.
Hey, Dad, how you doing?
I'm doing okay. How about you?
He's not dead. He's still alive. We still get to talk to him. We still get to have him in our lives, albeit limited.
Guys, it is for me. I have no responsibilities. I don't clean the dishes. I don't cook. I sit around and read books.
Oh, have you gotten any more music on your tablet?
Well, I like a lot of the oldies, like Dolly Parton,
Yeah, well, hey, me too.
Johnny Cash. They sing a lot of gospel music, David.
Oh. Why is he sitting in a maximum security prison and I get to drive around, I get to go to the beach? I feel guilty for not being in prison. So, I think we have to get wrapped up here soon. We're almost out of time, but, just want to let you know that more than anything, I miss you.
Okay. Love you, David.
All right, love you too, Dad. Have a good day.
No.
I'm very hard-pressed to figure out why such an innocent, gentle, kind man wound up on the wrong side of a murder investigation.
It is. And that's the problem, is we always paint bad people and the boogeyman to look bad because it makes us feel better because we're alerting ourselves to them. Nobody knows how somebody is at home privately with somebody else in a relationship. And that's what happened here. Something exploded Frank Bushauer to cause him to place Cynthia under the... And that's what we need to focus on. It's about justice for her.
I've prosecuted serial killers, serial rapists, gang leaders, true sociopaths. And Frank Bushauer does not fall into that category. People sometimes do horrible things. The bottom line is, he made that choice to end her life, and he did it when she was in the most vulnerable position possible, naked in a bathtub. And that's why, even if he never did anything else wrong in his life, that is why that night
reason there isn't any evidence. Because he's innocent, and I can't understand how anyone could think that he didn't kill her. I miss him every day. You know, he's been such a part of my life. And now to have him in prison, I think about him when I drink coffee, because he's not there having coffee with me. And now I know he's having this picture my daughter for Christmas put on a coffee cup so I could have coffee with my brother every morning. I miss him a lot.
Music was something that was truly mine.
Justice wasn't served today. Look who's got the price to pay. Justice wasn't served today. I guess we'll find another way.
Before, my dad was taking care of me, you know, and now that he's been incarcerated, the roles have flipped. The roles have reversed, and I feel like I have to take care of him in taking forward the initiative for his freedom.
There's only one victim here. The boy whose dad they took away. Life may be
Every step of the way, it feels like it follows me.
it'll try to force
How-
your hand.
How do you let something like that go? You know, as long as he's still in prison, I will never let it go.
Life may be tough, but we're tougher.
I did say when I was a little girl that I hoped to grow up one day and have a serial killer for a brother. I didn't want that. That's not the life I had hoped for.
I just cannot believe that someone I loved so much and had such a piece of my heart. I think I just never wanted to see my brother as that type of monster.
I tied the mom up, and then I tied the little girl up. I put a chair in the bathroom, and then I put the girl in the chair and tied her to it. I went back to the lady, and I had sex with her. I cut the cord off the coffee pot, tied it around. This just shows how horrible this case was, and how brutal, just brutal.
There's quite a bit of blood in there, where you can tell that she'd been hit in the head several times, and she had blood streaming down her face and her hair. And when I started to take the photograph, it's kind of like seeing someone rise from the dead.
I think the details of that day are just engraved in me and part of me. I don't know how I survived something like that. It's amazing that I was able to pull through that. Can I have a minute?
This is from a scrapbook that I made for Jack. This is one of my favorite pictures because when we were younger, we would go to this amusement park and it had rides and carnival games, and Jack figured out how to win one of the games, and once he figured it out, he won us both these big bears and all these things, and he was just so happy as us having fun there, laughing and smiling. It's very sweet. This was just a special time of him just truly being a kid before the bad things started to happen. There has been times when I felt like I just can't do it anymore. I can't hear one more story or picture. I can't hear one more horrible thing said about my family or my brother. We grew up in a family of 7. I am the youngest by about a year and a half. When we were little, Jack was truly my best friend because we were so close in age and my brothers and sisters were so much older that we did everything together. When Jack was younger, he fit in just like the rest of us. But he did have some, emotional issues and there were times when you just didn't know if you were getting the good side of Jack or the bad side of Jack. When he was mad, and he didn't look like himself.
Hand me the remote.
Come on, Jack, there's only 10 minutes left.
His eyes would just get hollow. He'd get quiet. It was like the rage were fits of rage. Like they always involved violence, whether he was hitting my dad, hitting my mom, hitting me, throwing someone up against a wall. It was scary. Jack got in trouble a lot. The cops were called to our house a lot of times. I started seeing Jack do violent things, seeing Jack doing drugs. I remember the police took Jack away and sent him to a youth facility. His anger just kept continuing to grow. I don't think Jack was evil. I think Jack had deep, dark issues that caused him. He didn't get specific on what was tormenting him, but he would say that things happened in his childhood and things happened and he couldn't escape it. I think he did evil things. It's going to be very hard for me to say that my brother was evil, but he did do evil things.
This just shows how horrible this case was and how brutal, just brutal. I still have trouble comprehending how any human being could do that to another human being. It's almost like it was 25 years ago. This whole case began shortly after midnight on June the 7th when a White County deputy received a call about a missing person. Mary Phillips worked at this accounting place in Ball Knob, so the deputy drove to that accounting place. When he arrived there, he saw her pickup parked in front of the building. At that point, I think he just got a gut feeling that, hey, this may not end well. You got a mother and daughter, and here it is, 1 o'clock in the next morning. So the red flags are waving, so to speak. This one deputy went in and checked the lobby or the outer area. He could see Mary's body in there. He immediately shut the door, came back out, and said, hey, we've got a homicide.
I was at home. Of course, it was about 3:45 in the morning, and they contacted me and requested me to go down there to work the crime scene.
As an investigator, I've always kind of had a habit of going in, and when I go in, start lying on the floor. Her hands were tied behind her, and she had a white electrical cord around her neck, and she was nude from the waist down. I assumed at that time that it was a rape and a homicide. You get used to seeing different times of crimes, and I had seen several of them. I've seen a lot of really, it was different. One of the other investigators that was there with me opened the door to the bathroom. And at that point he said, the young girl is in here. When I opened her, in the chair, kind of slumped over. There was quite a bit of blood in there. You could tell that she'd been hit in the head several times, and she had blood streaming down her face and her hair. I assumed that she was dead at that point. And I was taking the photograph, and when I started to take the photograph, it was a shock, a real shock. You can imagine, it's kind of like seeing someone rise from the dead. Well, immediately I told the other officers that we need to get an ambulance down there, that she was still alive.
I don't know how I survived something like that. Wasn't my time. It took a few times after I heard the clicking noise to realize what it was. I wanted to move, but my body and I just stopped and listened. And then that's when I told myself that clicking noise. I said, is someone taking a picture? And I turned my head, and when I did, someone said, this one's alive. And I just sat there for a second, and I said, can you untie me, please? I have a scar that starts on the side of my face here, and it goes all the way up through my hair, and these are the scars that are left on my forehead here. I have one that goes all through my hairline, and then I have a real big indentation right here in my skull.
By yourself?
No, I've never added up how long.
It's about 12 hours.
Really? Wow. Didn't know that. Didn't know that. It's amazing that I was able to pull through that. Can I have a minute? Okay. Here's my place.
When I took the photo, she kind of turned her head to the left and looked up at me. And it was just a photo of, her face and her eye. Her hands are bound behind her back and tied to a chair. I was telling her what I was going to do. I told her I was going to cut the wires loose and cut her loose and get her out of there and take her to the hospital. She asked about her mom, and of course I told her that it just didn't need to worry about her mom, just need to worry about her right now. And I told her, if you would, just keep your eyes closed and hold tight to me. And so that's what we did.
What are you thinking about right now?
whole thing. And how it went down, and what a brave girl she was.
I'm standing at that point, and he kind of interlocks his arm with mine, and he walks me out of the bathroom, and Mom was laying in the floor, and I had to get over her. It never registered that she was dead. I don't know. God let me get through that point, and then the ambulance showed up, and they put me in the ambulance. I don't remember anything else until they asked me to tell my story as to what happened. I think the details of that day are just engraved in me and part of me. There's the details that I do remember will always be with me, the words, everything. I was at work with walking in the door. He came in and he walked in front of the desk, so Mom and I kind of both just stepped back, and he pulled out his gun. He told her to lay flat on the ground. He went to the bathroom and got a chair, a little metal chair, and he told me to sit in it. So I sat in it, and I said, "Don't hurt my mama." And he said, "I'm not going to hurt your mama, I'm going to hurt you." And that's when he got the butt of his gun and started beating me. And I guess I passed out. And when I came to, I'm just looking all around, and there's just blood absolutely everywhere. So I start yelling for Mom. And he strangled me, and I passed out again. I remember people kept asking me questions, and I was answering them, but I kept saying, "Where's my mom? Is my mom okay? And they would never answer me. And they asked me, who did it, and I do remember them asking from the head to the toes, everything he was wearing, what he looked like, how long his hair was, and then I believe his eyes were brown, and then he had a teardrop tattoo on his face that I will always remember.
On the way over here this morning, I was thinking about old granddaughter that I picked up last night after church, took her home. And I was thinking, that's the age Lacey was when she was tied in that chair and beaten while her mother was dead or dying in the next room. I can't get my brain to go where Lacey's brain was that day. Just hard to imagine what you went through. Lacey was able to tell the deputy that the guy that beat her, tied her to the chair and beat her, had a tattoo on his arm, and a tattoo of a turned out to be a teardrop under one of his eyes. When that information kind of hit the airways among law enforcement, that this was going to be Jack Jones. Anytime you're approaching a suspect, you're thinking, what approach should I use to get this guy to talk to me about this crime? You think, how I walked in, Jones just talked. He was just matter of fact, as I recall, just telling his story. This is the typed version of the interview of suspect Jack Jones that when I interviewed him in 1995. I tied the mom up, and then I tied the little girl up. I put a chair in the bathroom, and then I put the girl in the chair and tied her to it. I went back to the lady, and I pulled her pants and panties off, and I had sex with her. I cut the cord off the coffee pot, tied it around her neck after I choked her with my hands. I went back ahead with the pistol because I wanted to get revenge against the police because my wife had been raped and nothing had been done about it. The rapist is still walking the streets. Apparently an incident had happened with his wife and another guy, and the Ball Knob Police Department, in his words, did not satisfy with what they'd done. In reality, the wife just wanted to let it die, and she just didn't want to pursue charges. I guess he thought that if he'd been done wrong, well, that justified him doing wrong to somebody else, you know.
This man right here.
I was going to have something happen. They didn't listen.
That was his justification. This is a random deal. Jack Jones's first contact with Mary was the day he killed her. This was a revenge against the Ball Knob Police Department. That was his reasoning.
I've been trying to make sense of how Jack could go from my fun-loving best friend as a kid to the murderer that he became. I just cannot believe that someone I loved so much and had such a could do something so vile. It was unforgivable in my mind that I could come from the same line of blood as someone so evil to do that. And I couldn't understand why. He could do something so hurtful. It was devastating. To this day, I just still don't understand. Just don't understand.
While I was in the hospital, my whole room was just full of balloons and stuffed animals. I really thought that maybe Mom was in the hospital too, and that, maybe she had got hurt. And so I just remember looking around, and a nurse came walking up and asked me how I was doing. And I said, "Oh, where's my mom? I want to see my mom." And she's, "Okay," and she walks out. And, "I want to see my mom. Why do you keep sending other people in? Or why can't she come in with you? I just wanted my mama." And it probably seemed like it was forever, but I sat in there and just waited. Well, then, and then Dad came in. I remember looking at him. I remember looking at him and thinking, God, he looked horrible. Like he looked so tired and sad. And I was like, oh my goodness. And I didn't say anything, but I just, I didn't understand. And he got down on his knees and kind of put his arms on me, and he said, I just wanted to tell you that Mom is in heaven with great grandma. And I just looked at him, and of course people are crying, and I said, okay. That picture just makes me feel, it just makes me feel kind of like I did when I saw him in real life. Just seeing that face just makes me feel kind of like a scared little kid again. When I see that face, I see him, I have flashbacks of him yelling and just screaming at me. And I think, you know, how dare you? How dare you?
He's admitting he did it. He just said I was crazy at the time I did it. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm just no policeman. But he knew he was doing wrong, in my opinion. He knew he was doing the wrong thing when he did it. I didn't buy it. Jury didn't buy it. That's the main thing. The jury did not buy it.
I hated him so much. I didn't even want to speak his name anymore. My brothers and sisters never wanted to talk about it. They disowned him immediately. Everyone. Just even my father and my mother. He had no one. And that's where my heart started to soften up and realize that I had to be there for him, regardless of what he did. My heart just kept going back to that little boy and wondered where, other than what I remember. I was hurting, I was longing to have him back in my life. I can't explain it. I just didn't want him being alone. They proceeded to tell us that with the new DNA things going on, they were opening up cold cases, and a murder back in 1991 was traced back to Jack's DNA. And there was a story in the news about a young lady that was found dead in a hotel. Said that she was, strangled and raped. They had said that she was having a drink with a young man at the bar and was later seen with the same man going up an elevator. And they showed a composite picture of, it was Jack. His same hairstyle and eyes, and my heart just dropped. And I remember looking at my dad and he said, "Do not tell your mother." I didn't think in a million years that Jack actually did it. I just assumed that someone saw him there, but there was just no way my brother could do something like that to a woman. But the next thing I know, my father sent him to go to Arkansas. After my dad told me he sent Jack away, it was just, we will not speak of this again. And when my dad would say that, the look in his eye was, you do not talk about it. So I never questioned it. I think in my heart of hearts, I wanted to believe that it wasn't true. Back then, I was not at a point in my life that type of harm to a woman once I knew for a fact that Jack did it, when it was proven that Jack did it, I think right away my brain automatically went to, wow, there could be more. He was capable of doing
Did you ever think of him as a serial killer?
I think I just never wanted to see my brother as that type of monster. And I didn't want to think of my brother as a serial killer. My brain went to the fact, and the crime is unsolved. And there's parents out there wanting an answer. And I'm like, I gotta see him. I gotta see him. So I went to visit him. I wanted him to tell me the truth. Jack, if you've done something and it's an unsolved crime, how would you feel living all these years not knowing what happened to your loved one? Here telling me you're trying to do things right, you're trying to do good, then doing good means coming clean. He said, yeah, there's another one. He didn't give me any details, and I didn't want to know him right then. He just said, I will write you a letter one day. You'll know that it's the letter because I'm going to address it. He always wrote sis on the envelopes. It'll say Sherilyn, but that's it. This is the letter that Jack always told me was going to come eventually. I met her riding bikes. We went to the beach, and that's where it happened. White girl, red hair, maybe 110 pounds, 5'5". I believe she was found the next day or the following evening. There was a story in the newspaper. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that what I was reading was actually true. It was his confession for the murder of Regina Harrison. I went ahead and reached out to the detective. They were able to open up the case, again, with the advancements of the DNA system, and it was 100% match to Jack.
You know, just at a glance, it just looks like anybody else walking down the street. But you can't tell by looking at the outside what's going on the inside. And he had some bad stuff going on the inside. For killing Mary Phillips and nearly killing Lacey. But on top of that, he killed 2 other people. So, that's several layers laying on Jack. 3 people dead and 3 families decimated.
I wanted to see it happen to make sure it was done. You go 20-something years hearing that it's going to happen, and it never does. I've been this whole time without my mom, and by golly, they gave Jack an opportunity to have any final words, and then he chose to speak.
The only thing I want to say is that, I apologize, and I know that's means nothing. It doesn't replace the person.
He said, it's absolutely disgusting, but he said, Lacey, I looked at you like a daughter. And I'm sorry I hurt you. I mean, that is so weird for him to say that. What do you mean you looked at me like a daughter? You tried to kill me and you haven't seen me since. You thought you murdered me. And I felt sick and twisted way to hurt my feelings.
If this is what's meant to be, then I accept it. I own it. So, I'll take the punishment.
But my love for my mother, my respect, my memories will always be there.
Do you feel guilt about not calling the police after you saw that news report?
Back in 1991, I saw the composite sketch that day, and if I would have said something to the authorities and turned my own brother in, if I would have said something, Mary would still be here. My brain never went there. My brain was, here's this troubled boy. In my heart, I couldn't fathom that he could do it. What is Lacey gonna think of me? I could have saved her mom.
I've rehearsed in my mind and in my journals for years. Just something I could say to Lacey. And every time I try to write something or think of something, it just sounds so awful. I'm so sorry that he took away so much from her. I did say when I was a little girl that I hoped to grow up one day and have a serial killer for a brother. I didn't want that. That's not what I want. That's not the life I had hoped for. It's the life and as angry as I was with him, I just couldn't walk away from it at the end. But I do pray that Lacey has found some peace in Jack's death.
Did any of his family members ever try to apologize or reach out to you?
Jack has a sister that tried to reach out to me. I just was at a point where I didn't need that. I didn't have to talk to her, or I didn't need that apology. I didn't have the time for that in my life. When I think about the whole situation as a whole, from 1995 till this day, it's still such an overwhelming process that I've been through. And I'm not haunted by it, but I'm reminded it's never going to go away. You know, I miss having a mom. She was taken away so soon that I feel like I've just missed out on so much. Her smile would light up the room, you know, and her words, her actions. I just felt like it wasn't fair. But it's kind of what I've just had to live with. So, you know, you live the life you're given and you do it to the best of your ability. I kind of feel proud that even though it was only 11 years, you know, I'm proud that I did have her as a mom, opportunity to be a good mother to my daughter. She was proud of me. She was very proud of me. And if she were here today, I hope she would still be proud of me.
They called the place Crow Hollow because when the wind had its way, the valley filled with a black, busy noise like a congregation. It sat 3 miles off the county road, where the map showed nothing but contour lines and a broken track. People who lived nearby kept to themselves and to schedules. School bell at 8, market at noon, lights out by 10. Crow Hollow itself had been empty for years, its farmhouse a hunched thing under moss and shadow. Locals said the family who'd lived there left in the middle of the night and locked the door. They left a kettle on the boil. They left a chair turned backward to the table. If you asked for specifics, you'd get specifics that contradicted one another. The Hendersons would tell you that Agnes Holloway, the last owner, knew how to coax hens out of winter with a song, and that she'd been decent to stray dogs. The Millers swore Agnes kept a ledger of favors and used it to shame people into doing work. Teenagers told each other the Hollow House hungered, but they said it like a joke. Old Mr. Kemp said it had teeth and was best not spoken of. Mostly, people steered their wagons and their gazes elsewhere. Irene Mercer came because she liked the house's shape in the photographs, low eaves, a steep roof that looked as if it had been carved with a slow hand, shutters like folded eyelids. She was 32 and had recently left a job cataloging old manuscripts in the city. Dealing with brittle papers and their secrets had been part of her life, and the Hollow House promised more of the same, but with a cleaner, quieter air. She liked the idea of a place that had a history she could map, things she could name and shelve. When the real estate agent told her the house had been empty for a long while, she saw potential. When the agent mentioned the rumor that nobody wanted it, Irene heard something else, a contract with silence that could be negotiated. The first week was all work and the thrift of patience. Irene scrubbed the kitchen sink until it shone like a small mirror, cleared a mantle of soot-blackened trinkets, and nailed shut a loose floorboard that had been flapping like a tongue. She found objects tucked where you tuck things to forget, a child's shoe wrapped in newspaper, a rusted hairpin, a bundle of letters tied with twine. The letters were brittle and full of tidy handwriting that spoke of weather and chores and, in one instance, the phrase, "keep what must be kept." She cataloged them in a small notebook they found. Location. Content not because she felt duty-bound to posterity, but because cataloging turned unease into usefulness. On the 8th night, while rain made the fields look like black glass, Irene woke to a sound she couldn't place, not exactly tapping, not quite scratching, a staccato that came from the attic above her bedroom. She dressed and climbed the narrow stairs. The attic smelled of dust and cedar and something older, a faint metallic trace like coins left too long in a drawer. In a corner she found a pile of hymnals and a wooden crate filled with little wooden tokens, each token hand-painted with a name. The names were scrawled in ink that had bled like dried blood. M. Holloway, T. Kemp, E. Mercer. Her breath went tight. She might have lafayed a trick of nerves, but the attic's shadows seemed to take offense. When she reached for a token, her fingers brushed others, and they rattled like 100 small hearts. The sound below became a single, articulate knock, 3 quick raps, pause, 2. It was a rhythm she'd later find in other places, a metrical insistence like a pulse someone meant to be obeyed. Irene put the tokens in her pocket and went downstairs. The kitchen clock, which had been dead when she moved in, ticked once and then again and fell into an acute silence that made her ears ring. It was as if the house had been waiting for something to move it back into time. After that there were patterns. Objects shifted. A spoon in the butter dish when she'd left it in the sink. A photograph moved from the mantel to the hearth. A scarf draped over a chair that had been empty when she left the room. Sometimes she would find the faint impression of a palm in the dust on a windowsill as if someone had put their hand to glass and cupped it. She told herself these were the house's small animals or her own inattentive absent-mindedness. She wrote possible animal activity in her notebook. Cataloging helped her keep fear at a distance. Then came the names. They appeared in places where one would only see names if one looked for the scaffold of memory. Carved into the underside of the dining table, sewn into a patchwork blanket, whittled on the back of a chair. They happened in handwriting not her own. Sometimes they were names of people Irene knew only through the town story Holloway, Kemp, Miller. Others were unknown. Always, the house seemed to be labeling itself, or asking to be labeled. At the bottom of the attic crate of tokens, she had found one with her own initials, though she had not carved them there and no one had given her a token. Her name looked older than it should have. The ink darkened as if decades had passed in a single night. Payment demands are never loud in small places. They are polite as a closing remark. The house asked for nothing at first more than tokens and memory. Irene found herself humming old tunes she couldn't place. She dreamed of a woman humming over a cradle and waking with the smell of lavender on her hands. She began to catch herself naming things aloud: the spoon on the sink, the shelf that had fallen, the name of an old neighbor taken from Mr. Kemp's mutterings. Saying names out loud made them feel real and oddly safer, as if naming something pulled a thread and made sure it stayed where it belonged. Then the ledger appeared. It should have been ordinary, a ledger bound in cracked leather found under a loose floorboard. Instead, it felt like a contract with weight. Its pages were ruled in ink that had the patient steadiness of hands that had written through war and famine. At the top of the first page, hand-lettered, was the phrase she'd seen in the letters: keep what must be kept. Below it, columns: name, item, given, taken, notes. The entries were coldly efficient. L. Rouse photograph given kept 1934 and J. Tomlin ring given returned 1942. As she traced the lines, her fingers trembled. Each kept was followed by a narrow note: relief observed, memory eased, child protected. She understood the ledger with a clarity that made her feel as if someone had explained the weather. The Hollow House was an accounting division old, exact tool to mediate a town's economy of favors and damages. People who had been hungry for cash had been hungrier for forgetting. If a family needed to erase a scandal, they placed a token or object in the house, and the house held the memory on their behalf. It would take something else, sometimes a small object, sometimes a name in return, but the debt would be balanced. The ledger told a history of quiet bargaining, of human transactions disguised as charity. That night, someone or something knocked on the front door. Irene froze with the ledger in her lap. The knock wasn't tentative. It was a deliberate touch. 3 knocks, pause, 2. She checked the chain. She thought of the tokens. She thought of the town's old stories. Then she opened the door. No one stood on the porch. Snow was falling thin and fine, landing like breath. The track of prints started at the gate and stopped at the step, as if someone had taken one careful step forward and vanished. On the step lay a small wooden box, the lid carved with a floral pattern. Inside the box was a photograph: a woman in a dress, her hair piled high, an infant against her chest. On the back, in a fine script, the words: given keep L. Rouse, 1934. Irene felt the house press close like a hand at her shoulder. She took the photograph and placed it in the ledger under given kept. That night she dreamed of a woman handing her a baby and asking, urgently, for certainty, keep her. If we cannot, she woke with her mouth bitter as iron. From then on, the ledger's requests escalated. It began, innocuously, with objects. A neighbor would bring a locket and a whispered confession. A farmer would slide a bundle of letters across the threshold with mud on his boots. Irene learned to accept these offerings with a delicate formality, to slot them in the ledger with the date and the name, and a note returned under mutual consent or kept effect lessened grief. The house, it seemed, understood the moral architecture of the town. It took what people could not keep and offered containment for a price. But the house's appetite was a learning thing. It did not stop at objects. It started taking small things alive: the memory of a boy who had drowned, and whose initials would blink out of people's speech, the name of a woman who had been seen walking with a stranger at night, the taste of a father's voice. Items could be returned, traded, replaced. Memory could not be replaced in the same way. Irene, who loved the tidy arithmetic of ledgers, learned to keep a geometry of debt where numbers did not always add. At first it requested consent numbers brought offerings themselves. Then one night she found an envelope under her pillow with a single token inside and a note: we cannot keep both. Take what you owe or the house will. The handwriting was small and precise, and as she read the words the room grew colder. She looked at the ledger. The margins at the page where her initials had been written had a fresh ink stroke: E. Mercer item, presents given, taken. She laughed then, short and wild. It startled her more than the house had. You cannot take what isn't yours, she told the plaster and the cold air, and she searched for a rational explanation. But the ledger's ink had the stubbornness of a thing meant to endure, and that night she dreamed of being counted like a head in a census. When she began to refuse, the house argued. It did so in the language of erasure. First, a neighbor forgot how to get to the market. Then a father could not recall his son's middle name. Small losses a town might accept. But then the hospital's nurse called, voice thin and trembling, to say that a patient's memory had blunted. She no longer remembered her daughter's face. Irene described the ledger's logic, and the nurse's voice went flat. Is there, the nurse asked, a way to return such a thing? The ledger had no return lines for faces. It had, in its marginalia, a note: human returns must be requisitioned. Economy will adjust. The adjustment, in practice, looked like a slow theft. Memories were transposed, redistributed in the town, like soil moved from one field to another. Irene tried to control it. She formed lists and ledgers within ledgers, color-coded efforts to balance what the house took. She held gatherings where people read aloud the names the house wanted to keep, and placed duplicates in a box she kept under the stairs. She taught the town to annotate family photographs with multiple names and datus duplicates, that is, to fumble the house's ledger. The house responded with small malignances: pictures moved at night, names smudged, pages torn from albums. It learned. Sometimes the house paid in return. A woman who could not stand the echo of a certain name for decades got the relief of forgetting, and, in its place, a tenderness she could not explain, a child in a dream who never left her. A warmth in winter. The ledger annotated the effect, relief observed, quality of life plus. These entries seemed benign, compassionate even. But the ledger's arithmetic was not always vanishing for the better. It was simply conversion. Something was moved, renamed, allocated. When one person slept better, another's memory frayed. Irene found letters in the ledger she could not reconcile, names crossed out and rewritten, numbers that made no conventional sense. Once, in a corner of the binding, someone had scrawled, "We keep what we must, and what we keep keeps us." She understood the sentence the way a tax collector might. A town's preservation of itself required a hidden balance, secrets kept and silence enforced. But understanding did not make the ledger gentler. Her own small experiments to limit the house's scope had costs. She refused to accept a photograph a widow begged her to keep, refused, because the ledger's margin beside the widow's name was already crowded with kept entries. Next morning the widow could not find the scent of her husband's pipe tobacco in the drawers, where it used to be. The town blamed the tide or the weather. Irene catalogued the correlation, and then, late that night, returned the photograph in secret, and the widow's scent returned like a shy animal. What disturbed her most wasn't the ledger itself, but the way people shifted their burdens onto it. Where once they might have spoken aloud to settle grief, they began increasingly to deposit their memories like old coins, thinking the house would hold them and make the town cleaner. Little by little, the ledger collected a societal silence. It became a clearinghouse for shame and mercy, its columns a civic machinery. The Hollow House did not judge, it accepted. That neutrality turned out to be the most dangerous thing of all. There came a night when the ledger insisted on a different sort of payment, names, not things. Someone had given away a child's laugh. A neighbor had bargained away a mother's lullaby. And the ledger had reached into its margin and written, "Need, living name scout. 1, a single." Stark line. Next morning the town woke with a name absent from its daily speech. Not dead, not missing, merely not uttered. People noticed, fumbled, but avoided addressing it because to speak felt like ripping a bandage. The ledger's handwriting at the margin where that line had been scrawled looked almost pleased. Irene realized then what the ledger had evolved into. An instrument that protected community, kept it functional at cost, be smuggling away troublesome truth. But those smuggled truths didn't disappear. They accumulated in rooms and corners. They made the house itself dense, like a saturated sponge. The more the ledger took, the more the house's interior breathed with the pressure of being full. On a March evening when the river behind the Hollow House filled, and the sky was a sheet of pale glass, Irene found that the ledger had her name crossed in ink she had not made. Beneath it, someone had written a phrase in a hand she recognized from the old letters: "Keep what must be kept." Taken, presence one. Her heart banged against her ribs like an alarm. She punched a shaky line into the ledger: refusal. Take nothing further. Ink answered her hand in a marginal scratch. Economy requires balancing. Item, to be determined. She slept with the ledger on her bedside table and woke to the sound of someone humming in the parlor. She went down and found, sitting at the kitchen table, a small wooden token with her initials carved neat and old, I.M. Someone had left it for her. No footprints led to the porch. She felt the house fold around her like a question. That night she dreamed of a ledger that would not stop writing. She woke with her chest tight and took the ledger down to the cellar, where no receptors had been set and the house's voice felt thinner. She dug a hole beneath the stone floor and buried the ledger as one buries a pet carefully, with a cloth and a stone marker. She felt a quiet hope, childish and fierce, that if she hid the ledger, it would break the chain. The house did not break, it adapted. The tokens multiplied. Objects kept appearing simply, with the need to be kept a child's marble on the mantel, a wedding ring at the foot of the stair, a scarf in the oven. People came at night with boxes and letters and begged her to bear them. They slid notes under her door. Will you help us? We cannot bear this. She felt her good will begin to calcify into an obligation. She had tried to bury the ledger to stop the flow. Now she realized she had become the ledger. Neighbors began to die in ways impossible to attribute to anything but time. Mr. Kemp's memory cracked open and spilled. He forgot the names of his children. A woman in the East Row, who'd always known the weather by the sound of the eaves, lost the names of months. People asked whether the Hollow House had been lucky once, keeping small disasters away by absorbing them, but now it asked too much. There was a sense, in the town, of a balance tipping. On a night threaded with fog, a procession camped for neighbors who had held to each other through weather and winter, who marched with lanterns because something had the idea of being ceremonious. They stood on Irene's porch, and one of them, Clara, a woman with a jaw like a stone, handed her a folded paper. Inside was a list: names returned, names taken, thanks, apologies. At the bottom, in a hurried hand, we will not let it take our children. We will speak them until the house cannot eat them. They went through the town, then door to door, porch to stoop, calling names aloud until voices raw from repetition took on a blessed raggedness. They read birth names, middle names, nicknames, names that had not been uttered for decades. The Hollow House listened, and at first it did nothing. The attic tapping slowed and then stopped entirely. For a night the town breathed and felt the lightness of naming. But the ledger isn't a creature easily deterred. Next morning, the wooden tokens were back in the attic crate, stacked like a small army. The ledger, unnamed, pulp-souled and dry, sat on a shelf in the parlor as if it had been returned by some impartial official. When Irene opened it, she found a new entry in a hand that had once written, "Keep what must be kept. Adjustment. Communal rehearsal reduces appetite temporarily. Further systemic balancing required." "What else can I do?" she whispered to the binder of stitched pages. The ledger answered only in its way. Names would be kept, names would be returned. The economy would be balanced by compromise, by substitution, by the slow reallocation of memory. People could game it for a while, hold names aloud like charms. But the ledger's hunger was not moral, it was functional. If a secret made a town unfit to survive, an affair would ruin a business. Or a childlessness would pull a family's Waggoth house, would smooth the edges, exchanging memory for stability. Irene learned that when you keep for a community, you become responsible for its moral calculus. Names are not neutral. Whether to keep or to return is not a ledger entry, but an ethical verdict. She watched her neighbors bargain over whose pain should count and who should be traded away, so their bread would be warm. She felt the corrosion of being the one who made the call. In the end, as usually happens with bargains, the ledger demanded the price for its own existence. On a wind-heavy night, the attic came alive with tapping that was not a rhythm, but a sentence. 3 knocks, pause, 2, pause, 3. Irene climbed the stairs and found a new crate among the tokens. In it lay a single photograph of Herno, of someone who looked like her standing at a window, hand on the sill. On the back, in an old ink, a short line, given, I. Mercer presents kept. The ledger had written itself where the crate could not hide it. She understood then the ledger's final economy, to keep the town whole. The house would hold certain presences, and eventually it would ask to borrow from those who kept for it. The ledger wanted a name living and near, something to tether it. If Irene refused, the house would not be indifferent. It would take softly. Operatically until the town shrank into a place without enough names to make it a home. She tried one last act of defiance. She read names aloud at the top of her lungs in the parlor, until her voice frayed and her throat burned. She went through the ledger, reading each entry as if a litany. She returned everything she could to their owners, pressed photographs into the hands of trembling people, whispered apologies with the awkwardness of the penitent. She handed coins for bread and mended where mending was possible. On the morning after, the ledger lay open on her kitchen table. The pen had been used, lines had been drawn and crossed and rewritten. In the final margin, where handwriting pooled thick and earnest, someone and not she, and not the neat hand that had always annotated had written, "Keeper is kept. Present saved. Town's breath preserved." That afternoon Irene walked to the river and let the cold water lap at her boots. She thought of ledger entries as frost on leaf. They glint and do not last, and yet they change the plant. She thought of the town's small compromises and the ways people had learned to speak names out loud. She felt a fatigue so deep it seemed that the land itself had borrowed her energy. In the evening she returned and found the ledger gone from the table, and the attic crate of tokens neatly stacked, their painted names unblemished. On the kitchen counter a single note in a familiar hand read, "We keep what must be kept. We give back what we can. Thank you." There was relief in that simple sentence, like the slackening of a belt. Whether the ledger had been pacified, whether the town had learned the art of hearing its own names, and thus stolen the house's appetite, she could not say. Perhaps the Hollow House would always have need. Perhaps it simply had, for the moment, rebalanced. People still brought things, still slid envelopes under doors. The tokens remained, and the attic still held them. Names continued to be spoken aloud on porches at dusk. Irene kept to her habit of cataloging, but she did so with new humility. She stopped thinking data could simplify the messy economy of human lives. She kept a small copy of the ledger's last page in her pocket as if a talisman. When she grew old and her hands trembled, she told stories to children about the importance of saying a name and of the quiet ways. A town cares for itself. She taught that memory was not simply an archive, but a responsibility. Years passed. Some names returned. Others remained with the house, worn smooth by decades of being pressed like coins. The Hollow House still stood at the end of Crow Hollow, its shutters like folded eyelids. But when the wind moved through it now, there was a rumor within the sound. Not only the clack of hunger, but a counterchant. The voices of a town reciting names until the house life it must could keep in small, sacrificial measure without devouring its keepers. If the ledger ever unburied itself again, if tokens multiplied as they once had, the town would gather and speak. They had learned that keeping was communal work, and that no ledger is morally neutral. Some bargains preserve a village, others hollow it out. The delicate work is knowing the difference. And sometimes, on a winter night when snow fell like permission and the valley held its breath, Irene would stand by her parlor window and read aloud a list of names. The house listened, respectful for once. The tokens in the attic rattled like small hearts in a chest. No longer a counting machine's tally, but part of a chorus. Names keep us, she would tell anyone who would listen, and sometimes when she finished, the Hollow House would answer not with taking, but with a soft, almost human silence.